Hi guys, Jackie M here. Hope you had a great weekend. I missed yesterday's broadcast before anyone picked up on this because, first of all, haircuts, and second of all, because I had other meetings as well. So got back a little bit late. Give me a couple of seconds while I share this across my social media platforms. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie M, Jackiem, and I'm a former Malaysian restaurateur based in Sydney, grew up in Malaysia, and I gave up my restaurant to look after my Down syndrome son. And nowadays, what I do is live broadcast. I create food and travel content, and live broadcasts are kind of like my specialty. And today I'm broadcasting both on YouTube and on Facebook, but I've got some exciting plans coming up, which I will share with you guys closer to the date, okay? But just give me a second. Okay, share. Okay, yeah, so coming up to the Chinese New Year, I thought it'd be a good opportunity because I went shopping today and I found some crab quite cheap, relatively cheap, to make what I would consider I guess, a fairly popular, well, Chinese New Year dish. Okay, so I've got the crab here. There's about 1 kilo of mud crab, and I like these ones because they are female. Okay, you can tell by the row on their shells. I'll come up in a second to hold this up close. I'm just going to add some oil in this here before I go any further because I'm going to deep fry these crab here, okay? And before I go on any further as well, I just want to give a shout out to Lenovo Australia for the laptop that I'm using, the 2 laptops I'm using to stream my broadcasts from, and also the one that I'm monitoring from as well. And if you've got any questions during the broadcast, especially if you're watching this from Facebook, I should be able to see your comments and hopefully answer them during the broadcast, if not after, or the next time I run a broadcast anyway. And also Rode Microphones, also another Australian company that supply the microphones I use in my broadcast. And for those of you, especially ones on YouTube who don't realize this is a live broadcast, this is a live broadcast. So however long it takes me to cook this dish, I will be live on air and I'll be talking about what I'm doing as I go along. So yeah. Anyway, crab, here we go. Let's give you a quick look. 2 cameras. So every time I hold anything up to the cameras, you've got to realize I don't have bad aim. It's just I'm holding it up to 2 different cameras. So these are the crabs, and you see the orange bit there. They're the beautiful, my favorite bit of the crab. Okay, so these have already been cut up over here. I haven't actually smashed the pincers on a thing like that, so I've just left it as is. Heating up some oil, and I'm making a crab with salted egg yolk sauce today because salted egg yolk seems to have become a thing in Malaysia and Singapore over the last, since I left Malaysia anyway. If you go through some of the older Malaysian cookbooks, you don't really see salted egg yolk as being a featured ingredient in most dishes, but over the last couple of decades or so, I think it's kind of become a bit of a fad ingredient. And so salted egg yolk tends to get used in more of the premium dishes, okay? And when I talk about salted eggs, if you're just completely starting from scratch, right, we're talking about duck eggs usually, and you can buy salted duck eggs at your Chinese grocery store. This is what it looks like. You can salt your own as well, basically throw in. The reason they use duck eggs, I think, is because the yolks are bigger and it tastes a little bit creamier as well. For those of you who can't get salted eggs, you can actually make your own. My mom used to make our own, and you basically throw in lots of eggs into a jar, fill it up with lots of salt and water, and then cover it for a month. And that's your salted egg, okay? Leading up to towards a month, basically she'll start taking out 1 egg a day to boil and test it and see if it's salty enough. Once it is, then she'll take everything out and she'll be happy with it. Okay, so it's a little bit of a, it's not an exact science. I've seen online where they show you how you can make a fast track salted egg. I tried it, didn't really work out, but maybe you can try it yourself as well. But obviously you don't have to use duck egg, you can use chicken eggs as well. Okay, and nowadays, in fact, certainly here in Australia anyway, at the Asian grocery stores, you can in fact buy just the egg yolks themselves in the freezer section. So they're not exactly cheap. A box of like I don't know how many egg yolks now would cost you about $10 or something like that. But it'll basically save you having to buy a whole egg and then only use the yolk, which is what I'm doing now. Okay. So these yolks I have actually hard boiled. I've only got 3 left, so I'm only using 3. Hopefully that's yeah, they'll be all right. So I'm just gonna crack them, and I'll show you what it looks like, and then it just looks like eggs, okay, but bigger. These are quite old actually, more than months and months ago, and they've been sitting in the back of my fridge. So the yolk have actually kind of like dissipated a bit, sort of thing, but otherwise, yeah. So here's the egg. Looks like a regular egg, and what I want to do is get to the yolky bit, okay? And usually with salted eggs, it used to be like a poor man's food, and we used to actually eat salted egg with Chinese congee, okay? Basically, we just rice with lots of water, cooked with lots of water, okay? So here's 1 egg yolk here. Okay, so you can see it's quite a little bit bigger than your regular egg yolk. I'm going to actually throw this into a blender and blend it up, okay? Because you want it all mashed up. You can, of course, just use a fork or knife to mash it up. I find that when I do that, it doesn't actually, you know, it just takes a little bit longer. So it's easier just to throw it in a blender if you've got one, and just do it like that. Now, the other ingredients is quite a simple recipe. The only thing about this is that I don't actually have all the ingredients with me because salted egg yolk sauce usually is made with it's actually usually made with you know, the sauce bit comes from evaporated milk. I don't have any evaporated milk lying around. Evaporated milk is basically milk in a can that's kind of like a little bit concentrated, but it's not sweet, okay? Some people confuse evaporated milk with condensed milk. That's not the same, okay? Condensed milk is sweet, and you use that in coffee. Well, I do anyway, being Asian. But yeah, so because I don't have, you could in fact use fresh milk. Some recipes call for fresh milk. Because this has actually kind of like the egg yolks kind of like run into the egg white portion, I'm actually going to throwing a little bit of that as well, instead of trying to get purely at the egg yolk, okay? Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you could use fresh milk, but I don't actually buy fresh milk. And if you remember my last week's broadcast where I was using soy milk, I've run out of that as well. The only soy milk I've got left lying around the house is actually sweetened soy drink, okay? So I couldn't use that. So I'm going to use coconut cream. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I actually personally like coconut milk, coconut cream. Okay, I take very little, like, you know, dairy and stuff like that. So I don't usually have like a ready thing of fresh milk lying around. And it so happens I've run out of evaporated milk. Okay, and even evaporated milk, I use it for cooking mostly. Okay, so just turn this up. So I've got 3 egg yolks here. I'm just gonna whisk this quickly. Perfect. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay. So just putting this behind here, and I'm gonna get to the crab, right? I wanna deep fry the crab first, okay? So this is what they look like. And first of all, I'm gonna crack an egg. I'm gonna basically dunk them in the egg wash, right? And then dunk them into some tapioca or corn flour mix, right? And then throw them in the oil. So that's the process usually if you're doing any deep frying. Those are the steps you want to go through generally. If anyone has any problems with the audio or whatever, hey Christine, what do you usually do with the salted egg whites? I eat it usually. Usually it goes really well with really bland stuff. But to be honest, I usually nowadays buy just the egg yolk, because when I'm cooking this dish and I can't use the egg white in anything else, then you can actually dice it up and then throw it in a fried rice or something like that, or you can even throw it into like an omelet or something. It's a little bit unusual, but it basically just tastes salty sort of thing, but there's nothing patently offensive about it. But yeah, usually if we were having Chinese congee, Chinese like porridge, right? We would have like the egg cut in half, still in the shell, but cut in half after it's spoiled, and then we'll just scoop out little bits of it, a bit of the egg yolk, bit of the egg white, throw it into the congee, and then scoop it up and eat it like that, right? So egg here, and tapioca starch here. You can use corn flour, corn starch as well. I need a bowl. Okay, so throwing that in here. And I want to give a shout out to my hairdresser. I've been going to the same guy for 10 years now, and he used to have a hairdresser's. I don't have his phone number. I'll grab it later on, but he's Korean, so there's always a bit of a struggle with the communication. But he's based in Chatswood, so what he does nowadays, since he closed his hairdressing place, is that he sublets another one, and he takes appointments basically by phone, by text sort of thing. So anytime I need a haircut, which is usually every 8 to 10, 12 weeks or something like that, I send him a text and say, when can I get a haircut? And he'll say, when are you free? And then we work something out in between. Okay, so if you're in Sydney, you're based anywhere in Sydney, and you're not going to burst into tears if your hair he gets a little bit adventurous with your hair, then you should go and see him. Technically, he's probably the best hairdresser I've ever met. Okay. Yeah, Christine. Yeah, it is very salty. We're talking about the salted egg white, right? But yeah, have a look next time at your local Asian grocery store freezer section, and they should have takeaway boxes of just salted egg yolk, okay, and that will save you the drama of like not knowing what to do with it and thinking, oh, what a waste if I have to throw it out. Okay, so you can see the crab over here, and I was mentioning with my live broadcast, I've got I'm going to be actually going over to Twitch. If you've got an account, or even if you do, go over to twitch.tv and set up an account and look me up there, Jackie M Food. It's just being set up now, right? And in less than 10 days, I plan to do my first broadcast there. And what's going to be different with that is that you're going to have multiple cameras set up. And I'm going to actually directly interact with you guys live on air, okay? Like I'm sort of doing now, but in a more intense level where I'll actually read your comment and I'll talk to you while I'm cooking. So instead of like a quick 20-30 minute session here, you're basically getting a full-fledged master class, all free, though you can donate if you want. That's the beauty of Twitch as well. And talk to me about all this. And I'm going to have pre-recorded segments I can insert into the show. So it's going to be more of like almost a, I guess, pseudo TV show, but online and interactive. So like, yeah, which I think is the future of, content consumption anyways. You get both the beauty of video, and also you get live interactivity as well. So keep an eye out for my announcements. So twitch.tv/JackieMFood. Go over and set up an account there now, so you don't forget and don't miss out, okay? And yeah, I'm just gonna change over the pan as well because it's dying a little bit. And I'm going to talk. And the beauty about Twitch is I'm not going to be rushing through this because I know what my YouTube audience is like, and I know what some of my the Facebook audience is like. They'll be like, oh, you know, kind of just show us the finished product while I just stand here and talk for 20 minutes. But with Twitch, I'm going to be basically, like I said, people are going to say, hey, can you show me that again? And I'll do it. And they'll say, oh, can I take a closer look? And I can move my camera up close and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be fully an immersive experience, okay? And I've mentioned this before while I'm at it about deep frying, right? A lot of people get a little bit stressed out about not having a deep fryer. So they think, oh, I can't do all these Asian dishes because it involves deep frying. I know, because I, having run a Malaysian food business for 25 plus years and a restaurant, you know, doing some of that as well. I used to sell frozen curry puffs, which my particular version require deep frying, right? And people will say, oh, you know, they want to know how they can cook it if they can't deep fry it. And basically, they end up baking it, which I don't think is the greatest for that particular version of curry puffs because the pastry is not really designed for baking. But speaking of which, I'm just going to get a ladle here. Just give me a second. Okay, yeah. So I mentioned before, look, if you want to do deep frying, you don't need as much oil as you would need in a deep fryer. You can just use a wok like what I'm doing here. This is a heavy base wok, which I prefer because it generally means that the heat basically, you know, you get some insulation there so that you don't end up scorching your food, right? And also, but even if you weren't using a thick base wok, you can use a thin wok, right? Like one of those iron woks that I use for my stir fries. And then what you want to do, if you've got a thin wok and you want to prevent scorching, you buy one of these, okay? You can see this from your local Asian grocery store. Have a look around towards the back of the store. You should see it. Usually it's either, you know, is usually lumped together with all the utensils and whatever. And I used to say this cost 60 cents. I'm sure when I used to buy this, they cost 60 cents, but now they cost about $2. And like I said, they sit at the bottom of your pan. So if you're deep frying chicken wings or whatever, if they sink down to the bottom, the wings aren't going to get burnt on one side and, like, you know, so and all that, right? So you can get this, and then after a few uses, it's going to be a little bit, you'll start getting food stuck to it, like all the fried crumbs stuck to it, sort of thing. So you can wash it, and if you end up, when it gets to the point where it becomes hard to wash properly, you throw it out and get another one, okay? So I need tongs. I'm really bad with utensils today. Chopsticks, let's try this. And speaking of the technique for making salted egg yolks like super quickly, what I saw online, if you want to give it a shot, you know, let me know how it turns out. What you do is you basically get your eggs. Like I said, they don't have to be duck eggs. Traditionally, they do use duck eggs, but I know duck eggs are hard to come by. And just use regular chicken eggs. And supposedly what you do, you crack the eggs like this, right? And then you leave the egg yolk in one of these halves of the egg. And then what you do is you put a teaspoonful of salt on it and let it sit for 8 hours or something like that in the fridge or something. I forget now. Let it sit for 8 hours, and that's your salted egg yolk, right? I found that, like, first of all, 1 teaspoon of salt was way too much. And second of all, maybe my eggs weren't fresh enough, but the egg yolks broke apart. Okay, but in theory, you should get like a nice solid, I guess, yeah, fairly solid, a little, you know, but almost crystallized egg yolk that's going to be salty. But you can play around with it. I just did. I tried it the one time, didn't work out. Didn't worry about it. Okay, so there you go. And speaking of which, and other people have been trying my Malaysian soft egg recipe, and I've mentioned this before, how someone used a rice cooker, and that turned out quite well. Rice cookers and slow cookers are in the keep warm setting are programmed at about are programmed to be at about 65 degrees Celsius. Okay, and that's perfect if you want to do your eggs for about, you know what, look, play around with the time, right? I've played around with 30, I started out with like 40 minutes, 30 minutes and all that. You know, I think the best setting is probably somewhere in between those two. But if you want to increase the temperature, you want a lower cooking time. So if I wanted to do it for only 14 minutes, I'd do it in my Thermomix and set it to 70 degrees, so the Thermomix Thermocook gives me the luxury of being able to play around with the temperature settings, right? And of course, if you want, I've also tried doing it at 60 degrees in a Thermomix. That turned out a touch runny at 30, 35 minutes. So, I could theoretically extend the time and it might turn out better. So it's just a matter of like, getting it to the setting where the eggs turn out the way you like it, right? It's all a little bit of a subjective thing there as well. Okay, so these are my crab. That's step one. By the way, if you watch my live broadcast from the TAFE New South Wales campus, right? If you watch that, the recipe is now up on my website. Yeah. So I always forget to mention this. If you want to look me up, jackiem.com.au is where all my recipes end up, right? My live podcast from TAFE New South Wales last Thursday was on laksa. I know I've posted on laksa, different versions, and even the same version with tweaks to the recipe. But the particular one that I did live at Ride last week is now up at jackiem.com.au, and as well all my recipes that I do live. Okay, I'll just go and show you this quickly. Here you go. So these are the crab bits post deep frying. You can see that, right? Okay. I just want to tip out the rest of this oil and then use the pan again for my sauce. I always worry when I pour oil into a glass bowl about it cracking, so hopefully this is okay. And if you wonder where these glass bowls come from, I think from memory they came from a series of live cooking demonstrations I did with a Malaysian MasterChef runner-up Poling Yao a few years ago. It's quite funny because this was we were engaged by Malaysia, the Malaysian government, to do some cooking demonstrations, and they bought all these gear. And at the end of the weekend of cooking demonstrations, the PR agency just leaves everything there. And so I had my staff, and this was back when I still had my restaurant. My staff was going, "Oh, let's take this, let's take that." So we had a whole bunch of stuff that we brought back with us to my restaurant. Okay, so got that. And now what I want to do is do the sauce. So I've got the egg here, cooked and processed. And one ingredient that I also don't have, right? I know that's terrible. It's a really bad example of a cooking demonstration when you don't have half the ingredients. Another ingredient I don't have is what we call curry leaves in Malaysia. They provide a nice peppery flavor to a lot of salted egg yolk dishes. You always see salted egg yolk with curry leaves, okay? But I don't have it, so I'm going to leave it out. I thought I had some in my freezer. I think I used it up in my last batch of curry sauce, right? Curry paste. So just a tiny bit of oil in here. And what I want is butter. What did I do with the butter? Okay. So here you go, butter. So this recipe uses a fair bit of butter. And I'm just going to throw some in here. I don't know how the whole idea of using butter and milk got into got into the psyche of Malaysian chefs that they would invent a dish that uses these ingredients, because butter in the Western form does not feature very prominently in Malaysian cooking, as you can imagine. I'm just going to get a wooden ladle. Okay, so now I'm going to throw in the salted egg yolk. In it goes. I'm just going to turn it up a little bit. And one thing I want to do leading up to Chinese New Year, I just don't know if I've got the time to do it, is this Malaysian raw fish salad called yisang. Okay, I used to sell it at my restaurant, and it remained quite popular even after I closed my restaurant. So people for a few years would order them from me specially, right? But it's so much work, and nowadays you can actually buy pre-made raw fish salad kits, right? But the pre-made kits are actually really kind of like, they're just a poor shadow of, like, you know, what you would obtain by making it yourself. But it's a, you know, to be fair, it's a little bit involved as well. So I don't know if I will have time to do that between now and Chinese New Year, which is just coming up in a few days, I think. Okay, so you want to just fry this up a little bit. Remember that it's going to be salty, okay? And like I said, I'm using coconut cream. Just pretend this is milk, okay? Fresh milk or evaporated milk. I'm putting a fair bit in because I want to coat the crab with it quite well. And I'm going to put a bit of sugar in this as well, okay? Just enough sugar just to kind of, like, you know, offset the taste a little bit, right? You'll find that to be a common feature with a lot of Malaysian recipes, or certainly it should be anyway. So usually if you see a Malaysian recipe that just says salt for seasoning, you know that either that person is deliberately hiding a secret ingredient from you so that whatever, or they don't actually know, right, how to do it properly. Okay. Now, you would usually put a bit of salt in here, but you know how I like my chicken powder, so I'm going to put that in. Chicken powder is salty and also gives a little bit of body to the dish, okay? So at this stage, I don't know if you can see this properly. At this stage, you would want to whisk this some more till you get a smooth sauce, right? But I don't know if I should bother because I quite like that it's a little bit crumbly, okay? So the flavor is just right, and I'm going to toss the crab pieces back into this. And I've mentioned this many times before, in terms of putting sugar in the recipe, you just want a little bit, like, you know, half a teaspoon or something, just to offset the saltiness, right? And that's one feature of Malaysian cooking that's a little bit different to Thai. Thai cooks tend to like their sugar a lot. I remember when I was in Chiang Mai and cooking with the crew at the Shangri-La Chiang Mai, right? All their recipes had a fair bit of sugar in them, which I find really quite interesting. It's nice, it's, you know, it's got its own characteristic, but usually in Malaysia, we would just a little bit, just to kind of like I said, just to balance out the flavor as to making it taste outright sweet, okay? When anyone asks you what's the difference between Thai and Malaysian cooking, and you mention this, they'll be really impressed because a lot of people don't know the difference between Thai and Malaysian cooking. Okay, so that's all there is to this, right? You just want to make sure that your crab is cooked through properly, which I think mine are, but otherwise you can cover it and let it simmer a little bit longer. Just let me dish this out so you can have a good look at it. Okay, so I've run out of stuff I can put this in. Let me hold this up. I'll find something to serve this in properly later on. Like I said, usually you would want to actually blend it either with a hand blender, right, before you toss in the crab. And you want a smooth paste, but I quite like it crumbly like this, so you can see that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to take photos of this so you can have a look. But this is going to be my lunch, so I'm going to say selamat makan, which means happy eating, and I will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, thank you guys. Ciao.